I've never learned anything the easy way. I only learned the hard way, and it was always that way growing up. I don't know why. It just seemed like that's the way things. It's probably how things stuck with me. Ultimately, maybe I was too bored otherwise to wait for it.
Brilliant, because it's. I think being bored is so important because when you are bored as a child, as an adult, it allows you to think, allows you to find solutions. Nowadays, where you have immediate gratification through social media, that element is taken away somewhat from children. Welcome to Ride to Success, the podcast that takes you on a learning journey to a more productive, creative, and active life through the power of the bike. I'm your host, Pedro Couto Lopes. You can find me on LinkedIn under my own name. I'll leave a link on the show notes. And today's conversation is one that many entrepreneurs and founders grapple with. What if the frustration you keep complaining about is actually your next business? On today's Ride to Success, I'm sitting with Josh Sprague, an endurance athlete, adventure racer, and founder of Orange Mud, a brand born because his gear couldn't keep up with his ambition. He's raced over 500 endurance events, outrun a tornado on a 720-mile gravel race, and learned when to push and when to DNF. If you love bikes, or innovation, or even turning your passion into purpose, stay with us. By the end of this episode, you will rethink how to quit, redefine success, and walk away with one clear step toward building a more aligned, active life. And if you enjoy this conversation, make sure to follow Ride to Success wherever you listen. That's the best way to let us know that you enjoy the show and to keep listening to the next episodes that are released on a weekly basis. Now, let's get into this conversation. Welcome, Josh, to Ride to Success. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to cover some fun stuff.
Brilliant. I mean, there is a lot to cover. You have quite a palmarès, quite an experience, so I'm looking forward to get stuck into this conversation. But before we get into that, I wanted to try to understand first a little bit about your formative years. Because looking back, as a teenager growing up, how did sports come about your life? Were you always kind of the sporty kind of kid, always getting in adventures, or was that something that you picked up along the way?
Sure. Yeah, no, that came later. The adventures definitely came early. I grew up a country kid, and I grew up on dirt roads, and there wasn't much to do besides going hunting and fishing and riding my bicycle. I remember even learning to ride my BMX. It was tough on the gravel roads. I don't think a lot of people appreciate how much harder it is to learn on a chunky, rocky gravel road when you're a little kid. I remember going to my grandparents, and they had this giant granite boulder in town in their front yard, and I would hold on to it. And as I was learning to ride my little BMX bike, and it was so much easier because there was a sidewalk. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. But on the gravel roads, I crashed a lot. But yeah, as an athlete or as a kid, I was just an okay athlete. I was not great I was not even good until high school, but a lot of what I've done has really been since high school. It was I got lean in high school, and I became, a good runner, and I've always been a cyclist, but it was really shortly after high school I bought my first specialized rock hopper, and I wanted to ride the single track trails in Topeka, Kansas, and I bought a rock hopper like a 1990. It must have been like a 94 or something. I bought it at a pawn shop for like $800, which seemed like an incredible amount of money back then. When you're 19.
I'm sure it was, yeah.
And yeah, I ended up, that's what really got the love of mountain biking going. BMX was fun, but I did my first endurance ride. My cousin and I rode to the town of Alma, 20 miles away, where I went to high school, and we rode there when we were probably 10 on our BMX bikes, and we even cut across pastures, across cow paths, and drank water from the creeks, and we didn't take food or anything, nothing, and we just rode to town
That's just a
on
pleasure.
again on dirt roads. I mean, this isn't a paved road. This is dirt and big hills and whatnot, and once we got to town, my dad met us at the co-op with a load of sand on a trailer, and threw the bikes on top of the sand and hauled us back home to probably do some project that we needed to work on. So yeah, definitely. I didn't grow up some, cycling phenom or anything by any stretch of the imagination, but yeah.
But it sounds like you were like exploring the kind of what was possible, like with the bikes you had at the moment, and just like going and having fun, and that's kind of that's a kind of an important experience to have, because it's really allows you to see the bike as freedom, see the bike as exploration, and you said raising, growing up in the countryside, that kind of having that affinity with nature comes back to play later on in the years. Yeah. And I wanted to understand a bit more about that, because, you mentioned high school, you started getting lean, starting paying more attention at running. And was there, at what point did endurance events before we get to events, let's talk about more the personality, because there is a level of kind of a specific trait, I believe, that you need to have to compete in multi-day events, in endurance runs or bikepacking or gravel events. And can you pinpoint like a moment or a period of your early life where you realize, I think this is what I want to do. I think this is where I'm at my best.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about at my best. I think I'm still figuring that out. But but in terms of the endurance craving and what it would take to satisfy that, I still remember clearly the biggest turning point for me that really pushed me into mountain biking big time. My boss, Mike, when I was like 22 or 23, I lived in Phoenix, moved to Phoenix when I was 22, and he's like, he rode all the time, and he's like, you should come riding with me sometime. I thought, man, you sound like you do a lot of really cool stuff. I don't think I can hang with you. I think I'm gonna go for a ride by myself first. Can you steer me to a place to go ride? And he said, yeah, go ride Desert Classic. So I go to South Mountain, and I rode Desert Classic, which I've since ridden thousands of times, literally. And I go out there, and he's saying, it's like an 18-mile trail, 9 out and back, and he rode it all the time like it was no big deal. And to me, I get out there, and I'm like, this was like going to war. It's just like, man, this is really scary. There's cactus everywhere. There's a lot of sand. It's freaking hot. And I go out there in my old freaking rock hopper, and I take off riding. And I literally felt like I did one of the coolest adventures ever known to man. And I didn't have a GPS on my bike or anything at the time. And I got to this point on the trail, and I just thought, surely this thing must go on for thousands of miles. Because it seemed like I'd already rode like 20. And in hindsight, it was like 4 or 5 miles is all I rode. But when I got to that point, I remember looking off into the distance, and all I saw was single track running out into the distance from the top of this apex of this hill that I got to. And I just remember looking at that thinking, this is the coolest adventure I've ever had. And I don't think I'm going to go further today, but I really, really love this. And I ended up turning around, going back. Like I said, ended up being like a 8, 9, 10 mile day probably. But that was a deciding point. I'll never forget the view. That view, it was about sunset. It was like something out of a movie. It was too awesome. And it's what really made me say, I want to do this. And that's what got me into mountain bike racing. Was after that, I mean, I've done hundreds and hundreds of mountain bike races, and I still love them to this day.
Brilliant. So did you, after that, like, well, that's kind of revelation, that experience of riding by yourself, well, did you get to ride with your boss? Well, after getting a bit more confidence?
Yeah, the true irony is that yeah, that led to another bike, and so I ended up getting my first full squish. I got a Gary Fisher Sugar 3 Plus, and I went out riding with him, and the very first ride, I probably got 6 or 7 rides in, and then he's like, "Yeah, you should go up. We'll go climb Telegraph," and I'm like, "Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I don't know any names, and I didn't know the trails. They didn't used to be labeled back then, and that day, I've got this new bike. I've only had like 2 or 3 weeks, and we go all the way up to the top of this climb, and then he and his Nimrod buddies start descending down this really steep, loose, chunky section that still is intimidating to this day. And here I don't know anything, and I'm halfway down the hill, and I'm holding my own until I hit something wrong, and the bike goes freaking flying down the hill and jacks up my hanger, and I think I blew a tire.
Oh wow. Okay.
It was awesome, and I'm like, "Thanks, Mike. That was great." And
But the fire.
yeah, it was awesome. And then I tell you that I've only cried a couple times in races, but he ended up talking me into doing the Tour of the White Mountains, and they have different distances, but I ended up riding the 52-mile mountain bike race up in Show Low, Arizona, and this was probably not long later, maybe 6 months later, and that was one of the most epic days I've ever had in my entire life. When you're really nervous and you're still a new cyclist and you're riding technical terrain. I about hit a bear. I had numerous crashes. I can't even tell you how many. I twisted a stretch of like 10 or 12 links on my chain. So every pedal stroke, every other like third pedal stroke, my chain would jump. And I crossed the finish line, 6-7 hours in. I don't know. And I remember his wife came up and gave me a hug, and I started bawling. I didn't think I was going to make it. I didn't know if I was going to survive, let alone finish the race, which, is for anybody that's done a lot of endurance stuff. You always, like, to me now, I could go, ride to Kansas from Texas, and it wouldn't scare me. If you're like, you got to do that today. I'm like, okay, well, that'll be fun. But back then, 52 miles was frightening. Just like 6 miles or 5, 10, 8, whatever it was in the first beginning was frightening. And then the next ride was, and there was a lot of frightening in them first year or two of riding, where you crash all the time and you're bloody all the time. And I remember my girlfriend even once saying, "Are you sure this is a sport for you? You're bleeding every time you come back." And I just turned out I had bad SPDs to start. I couldn't ever unclip on one side. So yeah, it's fun.
I mean, I think it's part of the journey. You don't have the technical skills, and sometimes the equipment is not on your side, and it's part of the learning journey. All of us make mistakes when we're starting, and doesn't matter where. If you're just starting to learn your bike, or if you're starting yourself into endurance events, there will be always setbacks, and you just have to deal with them. You just have to kind of try to put them into perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
And it sounds like that's what you've done. And it's funny about the story about your girlfriend telling you, like, are you sure this is what you should be doing or what you need to be doing? Because you come back destroyed every single time.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, we are now chatting here, and hundreds and hundreds of endurance races have passed since that point in time that you just mentioned. Like, I think it's over 500 now. And what I wanted to kind of try to distill, if I can, or if you allow me to, is that what has this experience taught you? Like, having raced and having kind of crashed, mechanicals, setbacks. What has this taught you? Like, can you distill this, or is this like too much?
Yeah, no, I do. I think about it all the time. I mean, I own 3 businesses, so I'm used to failure. I'm used to constant setbacks. I don't know, give me an hour, there's probably a new one that I'll have to deal with. So racing and riding bikes is no different. It's just a piece that of your life that you're experiencing that is going to have challenges. And you could be mechanical, it could be your body being a mechanical issue. I mean, it could be your brain and your gut, and so I think it teaches you to break everything into its individual elements and just focus on accomplishing one element at a time, and realizing that it's a checklist. That's all it really is, and it's a series of checklists that you have to complete in order, and some of them aren't going to go the way you want, and then you're going to have to rewrite it, and then you're just going to have to keep going. And I think that's the way I've always approached the cycling side of things. I mean, anybody that's ever raced with me, or even been a volunteer at races knows I'm always a guy smiling and being an idiot. I like to have fun, and I always am out there doing that. I'm never the guy that comes in all huffy puffy and mad like a lot of people are. And I mean, I broke my bike in a race a couple of years ago, and at 40 miles in, I ended up borrowing a bike from one of the female aid station workers, and I rode her bike in, and it was a size small. I don't ride a small. I had to modify it for a while, and just to ride the other 66 miles on the Mahaday 100 across North Dakota. But that's just that's just what you do. You don't get upset.
Yeah,
You don't
that's there is a lot of crossover between events, endurance events, cycling, sports in general, let's say, and business. And one of the key lessons that that I can take from what you're telling me is that there will be always setbacks, there will be failures, and you deal with them through creating checkpoints that you can assess whether the progress of the business or of a race is going your way, and then so that you can, I guess, compartmentalize and kind of build on that, rather than trying to think of, well, this is just a 100-mile race, or this is a business that I need to make it profitable within 3 years. And it's like, well, this is too much. And then by the sound of it, step by step, break it down into the smaller steps. And now, what can I do today? Or what can I do in the next kilometer to move forward?
Exactly. Yeah, the people that talk about, they visualize, they study the course, and they visualize every climb and all that. I've tried to do that. I think it's really fascinating. I wish I was that smart, but apparently my brain doesn't have the buffer capacity for it. So I just look at it as like, I made it to the start line. I've air in my tires. Everything's lubed up. Now it's just up to me to get to the finish. And again, you just have checklists, and you just wait for the punch list to be added to. It's like, okay, now we have a broken chain. Now that person just crashed. Should I pass them, or should I stop and help them? It's all those type of things. You just roll with it, and it'll work out every time. I mean, out of all the races I've done, I think I've only DNF'd. I think it's 3 now, and one was hypothermia that my whole team had, and another I broke my foot. Another I rolled an ankle, and I think and we had a 4th where 2 of my teammates' feet rotted off, and that was 92 hours into a race, so it was a long ways. But otherwise, I finish everything I start, and I may not be the fastest. I've been on the podium, and I've been dead last. I've literally covered it all. I've been front to back.
I mean, this makes me curious, because obviously you have the mindset that you set yourself. I want to complete this, and I'm going to do my best to complete this. And that's a mindset that a lot of people apply to their lives, to the sport they enjoy doing, to the businesses that they're running or managing. But one particular thing that stands out for me from what you have just shared is that there seems to be an element that you enjoy suffering, because all of these experiences that you just described, you have to go through huge amounts of pain. You have to cross that threshold perhaps multiple times, whether it is running a business or participating in an event. So do you enjoy suffering?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I've never learned anything the easy way. I only learned the hard way, and it was always that way growing up. I don't know why. It just seemed like that's the way things. It's probably how things stuck with me ultimately. Maybe I was too bored otherwise to wait for it. But I think there's in endurance sports, it's the suffer is what makes it. Maybe not fun is the right way to say it, but it's what makes it memorable is probably the more important way to look at it. And, if I go for a ride and it's just a fun, blissful 50 miles, and hey, that's cool too. Don't get me wrong. I don't have to suffer all the time. It's why we all train, right? Is to not suffer. Ultimately, when you think about why do you spend a lot of time running and riding and trying to be fit, it's because you don't want to suffer. But you know you're going to suffer.
Exactly.
You're just going to go harder, and then you're still going to suffer probably equally. But at least if something goes wrong, maybe you won't suffer as much. So it's suffer avoidance, but yet you're going to suffer no matter what. I mean, if I'm, out of shape and going into a race, I'm going to try just as hard as if I was super fit. And no matter what, the perceived exertion is probably going to be the same. The wattage may be different, but the RPE will be the same.
Yeah. Do you have to to put yourself in in a mental state where you get ready to suffer, or that just comes naturally to you?
Yeah, I'm used to it. It's there's every day is a new problem. So no, I the way I see it is that when I'm here in my office, I love my office, and I love our business and all that. But when I'm outside, if I'm in a race or going for a ride or a run, it's still better than working.
Yeah,
you can't have a bad day if you're out playing. So yeah, I'm always one of the happiest guys at the start line of a race, regardless of what it is. Let's go enjoy it and see what's going to happen. Is my perspective.
Yeah.
I'm not like you'll see some of these. Like some of the pros, they'll quit if they're just having a bad day and they're not winning. And I've never understood that. I'm not a pro, so that's all fine. That's the way they're wired. But I've never had that mindset. Like I am there to enjoy it, and if I can do well, that's cool, and that's going to be a bonus. But I always go out to enjoy it for number one.
Yeah.
I don't ever go out and say I'm going to give it my all today, and I'm just going to destroy myself, and everything's going to be terrible. But my only goal is to win. That's never been the mindset. I'm like, I'm going to go out and give it my all, but I'm going to have a good time. When I cross the finish line, I'll be smiling.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is a brilliant kind of starting position, because if you position yourself, I want to enjoy this, you are able to contextualize, you're able to put things into perspective, whether it is a setback like a puncture, whether it is like a prototype not being successful. And I think that allows kind of you to to reframe how you think, because that's at the end of the day, whether you're racing, whether you're starting a business, you're doing it for yourself. Or if you're not doing it for yourself, you need to perhaps reevaluate kind of the set of priorities, because at the end of the day, it's you that matters. It's you. You don't want to live according to other people's rules. And I wanted to understand from your perspective, kind of there seems to be a threading line from what you've been sharing so far that talks about resilience, that talks about kind of determination. Do you think motivation is a lie?
No, I think motivation's about all we got. In my opinion, I have a lot of willpower. I do have more willpower than most do, and I've anybody who knows me will I'm sure share the same thing. I'm one of the most passionate people about getting outside, enjoying nature, and conning other people into doing it with me. But then once we're there, I'm going to will my will on you to do stupid things, and we're going to finish it. And I think the motivation is for me, I would say proving people wrong. That's probably where it started from. I know that was always a motivating factor of people saying, why would you do that? Or that's too far, or that you're going to hurt yourself, or whatever. I'm like, I don't know. I'm out there having a good time, and I may cut my knees up and my palms from hitting the dang ground on my mountain bike like normal. But I think will and motivation, I think, are somewhat tied together. But both are definitely very, very important.
Yeah, and I think I wanted now to kind of I think understand and makes a slight transition into kind of an entrepreneurial side to you, because you have you mentioned earlier on you kind of running 3 businesses, and founding those businesses, it requires a level of problem solving. And a lot of founder-led businesses start with wanting to answer a problem, wanting to find a solution to a personal problem. And is this a trait that you attribute to you, kind of your formative years, to growing up wanting to understand how things work, or it was something that one day you kind of through experience, like, I don't like this, I need to find a solution?
I've always been
that.
Yeah, I've always been a problem solver. Growing up, maybe it didn't start as problem solving. I guess the problem solving is probably fixing boredom. Growing up a country kid, it was like, all right, my dad's like, go outside. And that was usually his answer. I'm like, what are we doing today? I don't know, but you're going outside. I'm like, okay. So I go outside. And I'd always do something. So, I used to build, I don't even know how many tree houses, not even all on our own land. I used to build it on my neighbor's properties. We're out of the country, no one knew anyway. But I still have a tree house in one of my neighbor's properties that they don't even know about, and that I built out of doors. It held up for, that was, I don't know, probably almost 40 years ago, 35 years ago.
Right.
But yeah, I build all kinds of tree houses, and we build, zip lines and all kinds of crazy stuff. And my dad and I built a 2-story log cabin behind our house in the woods, just as my play fort. It was awesome. A lot of wood, the rough cut wood that we got from the sawmill. But yeah, I always like tinkering and taking things apart and putting them back together. A lot of times they didn't work, to be honest, but every once in a while they would. But yeah, I built all sorts of things, a lot of tools too. In hindsight, I'd never let my children use the amount of power tools that my dad let me use, but I was using skill saws and jigsaws and reciprocating saws and all kinds of manual stuff, building all kinds of crazy things. And I used to build rubber band guns and sell them in school, which is kind of crazy in hindsight, but I'd make like pistol and machine gun rubber band guns that you'd stretch rubber bands down, and you'd take a string and pull them, and I just like building them because, again, we had wood laying around. I was bored. But and yeah, so
but
clothespins.
It's brilliant because it's I think being bored is one of the kind of it's so important, because when you are bored as a child, as an adult, that's, I think, is a place that you need to kind of cherish, because it allows you to think, allows you to find solutions, allows you to find ways of, like you, entertain yourself. And I think, in nowadays where you have immediate gratification through social media or video, TV, that element is kind of is taken away somewhat from children. And I remember from my own childhood, I would be playing, spending my weekends playing with my siblings outside. I would be there for like 3-4 hours at a time, and we'd be just entertaining ourselves, whether it was playing soccer or building stuff. And that's the kind of the elements where that's kind of bonds you together, whether friends, siblings, but also allows you to start developing whether it is in your case perhaps an entrepreneurial spirit, in other people's cases like starting to think about interests or hobbies. And I think it's a underrated kind of skill to be to be bored,
especially in our always on mentality that we have today. Like you said, I woke up at 4:45 this morning and thinking about all the work I had to do, but I did waste like 15 minutes of time just doomsday scrolling. And then I was like, what am I doing? I could actually be productive this morning. I got to start working. But it's it's boredom. It gets the mind going and makes you think and have to make an effort. And even my own kids, we make them go outside too, but we're not the best, just like probably a lot of parents are, where we let them doomsday scroll on the interwebs. But what's fascinating, if we just say, okay, you guys have to go outside, go do something. It's neat to see what they do. it's neat to see
Yeah.
like, oh, good, they do have brains that do work, outside of cell phone.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I think everybody can use a detuning of,
Hmm.
electronics, and just get outside and you'll
Yeah.
probably come up with something fun to do.
I mean, and that's kind of that's an element as well. That kind of being bored that ties in with frustration, and
Hmm.
frustration is one of the kind of particular traits with entrepreneurs, founder-led businesses.
Hmm.
Always start with the frustration, and you said in past interviews that the frustration that sparked Orange Mud was around the products that you were carrying and using on your races, on your multi-day events, on your long endurance bikepacking or kind of running events.
Hmm.
And what kind of I want to take me back to that moment, if you will, kind of
Hmm.
where you kind of that frustration kind of continued to build up until when? At what point you decided enough is enough?
Sure. Yeah. So when I started Orange Mud, I'd probably been racing for, I think about 9 years at that point, but
Mm.
I was doing about 30 to 40 races a year,
Wow,
between
that's a
mountain
lot.
bike, triathlon, road bike, adventure racing, and even things like Muddy Buddies and other little fun things like that, and 5Ks and marathons and whatever. But it was really the
Hmm.
adventure race and Ironman side. Adventure race side allowed me to stare at my teammates' backs and see how, when you're out there for, days, 12, 24 or more hours on end racing, and you're studying your teammates' back that's in front of you the whole time. You're like, all right, that piece up there, their upper cervical area doesn't move too much. Thoracic kind of has a little twist, but the
Mm.
lumbar region has a big twist. So if I could just move that backpack up, because I used to just think how we could modify the packs that we bought at REI to work better
Yeah.
for us. And so we used to do that all the time. But then that was adventure racing, where I could at least make some packs marginally work. But they were hot
Hmm.
and had a lot of problems. And then at the same time, I was doing Ironman, and I didn't even really like Ironman. It was just something I did because my teammate talked me into it. And he's like, "Dude, we need to do Ironman. No one understands what adventure racing is, but everybody understands what Ironman is." I'm like, I don't care. I don't want to be on the road. I'm going to get killed by some crackhead. And he's like, no, 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 we got to do an Ironman. And I reluctantly agreed to do the first one. And then I reluctantly agreed to do the second one, and the second full anyway. And I did 2 fulls and 2 halves. But it was on that final training of the Ironman St. George, the second one I did, that I was running with waist belts and handhelds, and I never liked either
Hmm.
one of those categories. I think they're really dumb. I don't know why anybody would run with a handheld. To me, it's like the last thing I want to do is run with a
Yeah.
dumbbell, which is essentially what it is. And then the waist packs, they squeeze your waist, they cause GI issues, and they bounce, and they were just overall pain. And it was shortly after I'd finished that training block that kind of tying it all together. We just had my son, and I
Hmm.
wanted to name him Clay, which is my middle name, and my wife's like, it's a stupid name, and no, and so we named him Jax. But 3 months after that is when tying it all together. I got frustrated one day going for a run, and I was like, man, I'm so sick of these stupid waist belts. I'm going to build my backpack, and I'm going to start a company for trail runners and cyclists, and it's going to have my name in it, Clay something. And so I went in the garage and I destroyed a gun holster, waist pack, some tie down straps, and I took a hotel sewing kit that I took from a hotel, and I crafted this first little idea. And the very first one worked great. It looked like it was worth about 50 cents because it was pretty crude. I think I maybe even used a staple gun on it to put it together. But then I came back that night and I said, hey, we're gonna start a business, and it's probably gonna cost $50,000. Worst case, we're going to have 2 backpacks, perfectly designed for us, worth $25,000 each, and it's also going to have my name in it. And she's like, whatever. My son was 3 months old. We hadn't slept in 3 months, and
Yep.
and then it was that night that I bought 43 domain names, and clay, which is a mud. I tied everything back to dirt. And I love dirt and
Mm-hmm.
nature, right? So clay, which is a mud, which is gray, but it's often orange, through 5 glasses of wine and buying domains for probably 4 hours. I don't know how long I was buying domains on GoDaddy that night, but I bought 43 and one of them, when I woke up the next day, we went through them all. And I just happened to have a childhood friend in town in my house in California at the time, but a childhood friend from Kansas. And I told him all the names. I'm like, what do you think? He's like, yeah, that orange mud one's the best. I'm like, all right, perfect. That's what it is. So that's how it all came together. And that's
Really,
14 years as of last month.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of the brilliance of the like founder stories. It's just starting with the frustration and kind of fully immersing yourself into kind of developing something that at the starting point was primarily to solve your pain point, and kind of now is expanded to to serve a multitude of sports and categories.
Sure.
So I wanted to kind of through as I mentioned earlier on, there's like a lot of crossover, but a lot of lessons that can be learned, whether it is through taking part in sports, also kind of running your own business. Mm-hmm. And what has been kind of for you the kind of the main lessons running a business, mm-hmm. whilst being developing all of the products, also still being very active in taking part in endurance races. Mm-hmm. What has been kind of the main takeaways? Because it's you are in essence a kind of a sort of guinea pig for your own product development. So sure. How's it been?
Yeah, no, it's been really cool because you take all what you learn from doing all these races, and then you pair that with the feedback that you get from clients and friends and ambassadors, and we've got this whole team that surrounds us that helps to shape what the designs are. And a lot of times people ask like, well, hey, what do you think about making this? I'm like, I don't like that. I like people ask for a waist belt forever. I'm like, I hate waist belts. It's literally why I started this company, and now we have a waist belt, but it's awesome. It just took me 12 years to make it. That was good. And 13 years, and we just launched it not very long ago. So, I mean, I think one of the coolest parts, aside from the piece that we already talked about, which is just kind of learn to pick the challenges one at a time. It's been to adjust as you go based upon that new information that you're learning. And so I started with our bottle-based hydration packs and with no chest strap in the front, so you wouldn't have anything squeezing your lungs, which is one of the biggest problems with a lot of packs. And from there, we did well. I came up with a seat cover shortly after that because, again, we were mountain biking after work, getting in the car all bloody and nasty. But it has a seat cover with a built-in belt, so you can change and not moon, a bunch of kids or whatever by your car.
Talk to me about that one, because that I think there is a funny story for that to start to create that product. I mean, and I'm sure there are many others, but like I want to know about that one. So talk me through that experience of what led you to develop that product.
Sure. Yeah. So that one, my buddies Gary and Oscar and mostly my buddy Nico came out every once in a while, but we worked together, and we used to ride up this trail called Skyline in Southern California after work. And we'd go and we'd park there at the trailhead, and it was, I think, 4.5 miles to the top, but you climb the whole time to the top of the mountain. And in the top, there's this old miner's cave or miner's cabin with no roof, but it's just this old stone building. And we used to ride up there after work, and one of us would be assigned to beer and the other would be assigned to food. And we just would alternate. And so we'd usually go up there with a couple beers each and some summer sausage or chips and salsa, whatever. And we get to the top, hang out, and then come back down. Well, every day that we go ride, we would change from our business clothes to our kit. Well, it used to be only dirt all around us, and it wasn't any big deal. But then they started to build houses around it. And I'll never forget the night that I, directly went home and designed this product is I'd already taken a specialized Esport shoe bag that I had sewn
Hmm.
to one of my beach towels, and the shoe bag allowed it to go over the headrest in the car, and that way when I put my towel on my seat, it wouldn't fall off. So I already had the
Hmm.
seat
Okay.
cover piece because I was often bloody, sweaty, dirty from biking, but I was changing there at the trailhead, and it was a couple hundred yards away. But I got my business clothes off. I'm sitting there naked, putting my kid on, and I look over and there's this little girl or boy a couple hundred yards away in a backyard pointing at me. I'm like, oh my God, people have moved in out here. and my life instantly flashed forward because my son at that point
Right.
was like 5 months old. And I was thinking, man, that girl's going to tell her mom. Mom's going to call the cops. The next thing you know, I'm going to get a ticket for, indecent exposure. I'm going to be, I'm not going to be able to go past, drive my kids off or drop my kids off at school. And none of these things ever
Yeah.
happened, but it worried me because people
Of
always
course.
tell
Yeah.
me like, oh, I don't worry about changing the public. I'm like, you don't have to worry about the changing the public, but the law thing's different. So you got to be careful, in today's age. So that's where I went home and I came up with a plan on how we were going to build a belt for that. And that was a product that really put us on the map. And we ended up being a Runner's World Gear of the Year that year after launching it. And that got us in hundreds and hundreds of retail stores and obviously consumer sales. And then it just took off from there. And it's really like the pack is what was really unique. And then that came out, was also unique, but that got retail and press exposure. And then it pulled the packs back with it. And so it was this cool circle of product life in this case that helped to get the ball moving and built a lot more credibility for our brand. Where if I just had to build just a backpack brand, when you're doing things that are innovative, it is a penalty. I've said this many times. People are always like, innovation is not a penalty. I'm like, it's totally a penalty, because you have to educate a consumer as to why your pack, how it works and why it's different and why you did that. And that's not something you can do off Amazon. Half the time I buy something from Amazon, I have no idea how the product even works. It's one of the problems with Amazon. At least on my website, I can educate you and I can send follow-up emails saying, hey, look, this is how you use this product. But in the beginning, we didn't have that. So it was definitely a major turning point for our business in terms of long-term success, but in terms of brand adaptation and just getting people to say, hey, you know what? I already have that product. I'd like to try one of your hydration packs.
Exactly.
Next, so it's been cool.
Isn't it funny how things work out? You're like, you kind of like an odd situation in the middle of nowhere led to kind of bring an added exposure that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
But all started from the point of you being attuned to, okay, this is definitely a pain point. This is definitely a frustration. And this will, if it's happening to me, it's definitely happening to many other people. So let me quickly figure out a solution.
Sure.
And that's the aspect of, a challenger brand, are able to move quickly, adapt quickly, research, develop, iterate, and put it into the market. Whereas a bigger brand doesn't have that much flexibility.
For sure.
That's a key asset.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that you mentioned that innovation can be costly, not just in terms of R&D, of which is obvious, but in the fact that you do have to educate the customer, and that there is element that you will have the early adopters that will love your product and will talk to anyone that's willing to listen about your product, but you need to have a few more years to get to critical mass before massive adoption of that innovation that you put in the market 2 years ago, whatever it is.
Sure.
So that's an interesting point that is, I think, is important to underline. I mean, has there been any kind of lessons that through I wanted to go back to kind of the crossover between business and kind of endurance sports. Is there been any kind of lessons that you took from your experience racing to your businesses?
Yeah, I would say, being adaptable is adaptable, and then the other side is probably in a way teamwork, but it's more of, um, how would I say it? It's more of looking at, like, when you go to a race, you take the energy from everybody else, and that helps often to move you forward. And uh, I think on our side, that's always been a piece that's helped me too, because I see the feedback, when I'm at a race, whether it's an expo or actually racing. I talk with people a lot, especially every time I see
Yeah,
people on course. I'll be like, "Hey, how do you like that orange mud pack?" They're like, "Oh, this thing's awesome!" Like, every time I ask, I'm always nervous, but they're going to be like, "This thing
of
sucks,"
course.
but I
Yeah, yeah.
never had that happen. But every time, without them knowing who I was, I always ask
Hmm.
that, and I like to get that feedback, because um, after they tell me their feedback, then I always say, okay, well, I'm the owner and designer of everything, but what can I improve? And it's always neat to hear. I ask for, what can I improve, and what are the features that you like the most about it? And I think that's something that has been one of the most beneficial pieces that we've ever got, because me as the designer, when I like write our product descriptions, for example, I write it based upon what's in my head and how I
Yeah.
intended it to be used. But it's always funny how people have different interpretations of what the
Mm.
features are and what they like for it, and that's really helped to shape not only how we write our product descriptions, because I like to pull people and like, hey, what's your favorite feature? Oh yeah, I didn't know that was a feature, but based upon your feedback, you think that's a feature. We'll call that feature. So yeah, I'd say it's going into everything with a smile, and then coming out of everything with action
Hmm.
from um, engaging with others to learn and make yourself better. That would probably be one of the biggest pieces.
Yeah. I mean, that seems to be an important element of Orange Mud, but I'm sure applies to your other businesses, which is deeply rooted on the community aspect.
Yeah.
You mentioned the feedback loops. You mentioned about the ambassadors. You mentioned going to events, to fairs, to shows, to kind of and the like collect all that information that kind of allows you to see how the product is performing, but also how people feedback is.
Yeah.
And kind of my interest is because it's like one of the key elements of growing a business is that at some point you start growing, and as a founder you start losing control, not losing control in a kind of a in like the business is out of control, but you don't get to say yes to every single detail that goes
Yeah.
into the business. You have a team, and that team has their own kind of responsibilities within the
Hmm.
what the roles that they have. And kind of my question is like, how do you preserve that uniqueness that when you first started was intrinsical to you as your
Hmm.
personality, your needs, what you saw and envisioned for the business, and now 14 years later, you know it does it's how do you still remain that essence
Sure.
and kind of still
Yeah.
be grounded?
Yeah, well, and don't get me wrong. There's plenty of things to get out of control in a business that you totally lose control of. But I think one thing that we've done really well. I know one thing that we've done really well across our businesses is, about 2 years ago, we started implementing EOS into our businesses, which
Mhm.
essentially is putting in operating standard operating procedures for each different aspect of the job
Right.
role. We broke apart everything, and that was it was actually a defining moment on my birthday 2 years ago. Um, it was really special. Everybody had a shirt that said, "Josh is here; he will fix it," or "Josh is our MacGyver," or "Josh is whatever." And I appreciated that, but it really, I walked away that day from our birthday lunch at the office feeling like, gosh, I need to fix that, because everybody thinks as me as the problem solver, and that's not good. That I am that for everybody. That everybody thinks that, and so as much as that was, I'm very thankful. Everybody thought of me for that. I instantly changed. That was in July, and
Mhm.
I quit going to the office almost like within a couple of weeks, maybe a week, and now I
Wow.
only go in for birthday lunches. That's about all I go in for, or occasional client
Right.
meetings.
Wow.
But I realized I just took a step back. I said, man, we're going to lay out a flow chart, and an org chart, and we're going to make sure we have the right seats and right button, the right seat. And then we're going to put in processes in each one of them areas to where we can be more systematic with how we approach everything. And then when you do that, it sounds sterile, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, even on the sales side, I still make sure that when we're writing scripts or even talking to our team, like, hey, when we send follow-up emails or if we're going to call, let's talk about what you're going to say. And I mean, I did it this morning with my 7-Clay team. I'm like, just remember, our customers are people. Like, we're not here to sell stuff. We're here to make sure we understand them as a person first.
Yeah.
And then we will help them to get them what they need. And that's a very important aspect. I've always, told people I'm a weird sales guy in that sense where I'm not a hard sell. I just want to understand you as a person. And if my pack works great for you or one of my services works great, perfect. But if it doesn't, I'll help you find the right one. And that's just the truth of the matter. So yeah, I think that was one of the greatest things that for sure is one of the greatest things we've ever done in our businesses was implement procedures and processes and accountability for each of those roles to minimize how important I am in each one of them, because it made me fail in everything is what it really meant. And, when we were smaller, it was easier to be really good at everything. But as we got bigger, I realized I was becoming bad at everything and I just couldn't stand that. So, that was the biggest turning point for sure.
I mean, that's refreshing to hear, to be honest, because that seems to be, that's an important lesson there. It's like you need to trust and empower the people that bring their expertise to be able to perform their work, and remove that yourself so that you stop being the kind of the hindrance within the operational systems within the company.
Exactly.
Because you started and everything was built around you, but when you scale, that needs to be delegated. You no longer can have oversight of every single detail of what everyone does.
No, it'll make you crazy.
Yeah, for sure. And that is also like an interesting comparison, because there is the ego, if you will, that is attached to starting a company that is very much attached to the founder kind of frustration, solving a problem. And that ego then kind of carries on. And then at some point you need to kind of detach yourself, kind of between you, the founder, and you leading the company.
Yeah.
Is there how was that kind of, you mentioned kind of that you felt kind of somewhat taken aback by the fact that you were seen as the fix-it-all in the business. Do you think that in a business sense, and you can also compare it to at sports level, do you think that ego should be more removed from how you conduct yourself, because it becomes an hindrance? Or how do you take that?
Yeah, for sure. When I was younger, I was pretty hard charging in my career, and we all, as you're proving yourself to the world, right? You want to show how awesome you are, and at least I always did. I wanted to be the problem solver. I wanted to help our clients out, and like in my early, my medical device career, I did really well in it, but it was because I worked so hard and I took ownership 100% of everything, and it was a strength, but a big weakness too. And I think it's one of the nice parts of getting older is you don't care. You're like, I don't need any more credit. I got plenty of credit over the years. I am more than happy to have. I want to be relaxed when I go to my kid's soccer game and not have to worry about, do I need to be the most important guy in whatever role it is in my business right now? Or could I have my team handling things just like they're fully capable of? So, I think in endurance sports, unless you're the people that are going as professional athletes and you're trying to win, I think all of us can do ourselves some big favors by checking ego and just enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if there's somebody else with mechanical, stop and help them. Is your 70th place versus 120th place because you stop and help somebody, is it really that important? And the answer is no, it's not. You know, could you make somebody else's day a million times better because you stop and fix their chain? Yes. So yeah, I think it's something that I really only bummed that I didn't recognize it sooner. And you know, when I hired a coach actually or an implementer to help put in EOS in place, and it was just neat when she laid out the org chart, because we did a few interviews, probably about 8 hours or so, and she laid out the org chart, and it was like Josh, and she's like, "You even do the website design?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "You do the blog?" Yeah. And you do social media? I'm like, "Well, I coordinate it, but I mean, I have people, and I realized, like, why do I do that? All I got to do is write down how to do it." and yeah, so between the book Who Not How and EOS, I just, cold turkey changed everything. Just decided I'm not going to do that anymore. I can have everybody else do things, or I'm going to hire a bunch of different people, and that's what I ended up doing. But I just hired specialists for each piece, and that way we can be great at everything. So yeah, it's funny how ego needs to get checked if you want to scale.
Yeah, I mean, it's because it's kind of it's important to have it, I guess, at when starting something, when it's just you, because it's kind of that helps you drive forward, it helps you take momentum on things, but it also hinders if it's not put in perspective, if it's not kind of if you don't see anything else other than what you can do, then it's limiting. Really, it is.
Yeah.
And one of the things that is important also to kind of, as I want to draw a parallel, is kind of the aspect of being productive. You talked about the aspect of wanting to have a kind of bit of control over everything, and trying to have multiple. The metaphor is like trying to have multiple hands on each pie, or however you want to say it. But it boils down to that. Do you think that productivity, the kind of being, when you see someone that is productive, sometimes you associate with being busy, someone that is always doing something, that always
sure,
I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and they're like, my day is 12 hours, 14 hours, like I never stop.
Yeah.
And then people associate that, he's being productive or she's being productive. And I think, from what you've been sharing so far, it doesn't seem to be quite the case. And I wanted to understand from your perspective, is there anything about productivity, about that aspect of being busy, about having control over everything, that you had to unlearn, other than the fact that you realize that, okay, I need to give responsibilities to key people and let them do their work?
Yeah, there's definitely a big difference of being busy. I've definitely had people that have that I've worked with or worked for me over the years that like to be busy but aren't being productive, and that's definitely the last thing I want. I want to do things that are going to be actionable, that are going to make a positive impact. And so, like on my desk right here, I have a clipboard. I print it off every Monday morning. And I used to use Evernote, and I record everything digitally, but then I just found I had a trillion notes of tasks that I'd never really look at. So by having a clipboard, I only have an 8.5 by 11, and I print it off because my handwriting, I just got tired of writing, because there's weeks that I don't always complete things that are on that board, or there's every week I don't complete everything. I can't. But I like putting things on a clipboard because I put on there what I have to get done and what I want to get done. And the wants don't have to get done that week. I mean, if I can, I'm winning. So a lot of times I start my Mondays and it's doing have tos, and hopefully I pick off a couple want tos because it makes me feel better. And so it's about accomplishment. I'm like, all right, that was cool. I needed to get that done. But by having this clipboard, it makes me look at the tasks that I have to categorize them as, is this going to do anything? Because there's a lot of stuff I can do, but is it worth it? Is it going to make my business better? Is it going to allow me to go on a bicycle ride? Is it going to empower somebody else? And then what I really like about Clipboard is I look at it and I say, do I need to do all these? And sometimes I'll be looking at them thinking I did, but it'll be Thursday. I'm like, you know what? If I would have just asked Maria to do this would have been done on Monday. And I'm like, that's stupid that I didn't do that. And so, yeah, I'm all about productivity. Even like today on our calendar, I think I set it for 9 a.m. this morning in our calendar for my wife and I. Last month, I was like, we need to be better about assigning tasks to people. And so I set a reoccurring monthly calendar item that we that all it says is, do you need to be doing all the tasks that you're currently working on right now? and the goal of it is, let's find some of those tasks to give to somebody else so they can they can win, right? I think most of us in business over the years have probably had a lot of people in the organizations that are underutilized that could be doing a job that you want to do because maybe you want the credit, or maybe because you feel you can do it better. But even though maybe some of the jobs I could do better, if it actually would get done, even if it wouldn't be as good, but can still be really good, it's better than me not doing it, is the way I look at it. So, and again, hopefully it can be done not only as good, it can be even done better. So, but yeah, that's one of the key things that I would say is write your goals down and make sure you're taking action from them based upon things that are going to be impactful, not just busy.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. I wanted to ask, because we covered already quite a huge time scale in, from your early formative years to now. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to ask you, like, when racing, when running businesses, has there ever been a moment where that energy that you have came from anger, came from some deeper emotional need to prove yourself that that you're better than this, or because I asked this question because anger sometimes is, if harnessed in the right way, can be a huge positive force, because it allows you to whether get out of a hole or motivate you to think differently and look at the problem more positively. And I wanted to understand from your perspective if that ever, in your formative years, has ever crossed your in a reflection, if you will.
Yeah. So one of my favorite parts of AI is that you have to define a problem, right? So a lot of people, if you hear anybody say, like, I love AI, I use it every day. It allows me to be an absolute machine, and I think it's so cool. But you got to use it. And so I have friends of mine like, AI's a fad. I'm like, there's no fad, dude. Like, you better be using this. This is incredible. This is one of the coolest tools ever invented. I feel like I'm working with aliens, and maybe we are. But anyway, that's a whole other topic. But one of the fascinating parts to me about it is that it's really taught me even more about, you need to define the problem. If you ask my wife and kids, they're ever talking about something, I'm like, well, let's just define the problem. That's just, it's the way my brain thinks. So what I think is really cool about that is, last Monday, to take anger, for example, I switched to a new financial accounting software last year in June. And we still are not live with this software, which makes me beyond ticked off. And that's saying it lightly. And so on Monday last week, I had my 30th onboarding call or something. I don't know. It's been a ton, but literally at least 30 calls. And I told my onboarding lady, I'm like, look, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I've wasted way too much of my life. I was so freaking ticked off. I was like, I need somebody else. I don't want to work with you anymore. And I think I'm just going to go back to my old accounting package, and we'll just have to come up with a different plan for recording bill of materials, which is one of the problems we have in an inventory-based business. And so uh, over the past 2 weeks now, or well, like 7 business days, I've had probably 20 phone calls with different financial packages, because this is something
Wow.
it's a big jump. It's something I don't ever jump lightly. I was with one program for 13 years before switching, and so
Mhm.
um, uh, but again, as I was having these calls, I I went into it first with anger, and again, I'm always playful, but I did tell people, I probably came off quite strong, where I'm like, I'm sick of this company, and how are you different? So, but I realized about by the fifth call that I needed to define that problem better, and that's the cool part of anger, is that I defined a problem with I defined the problem that gave me three different independent solutions to fix my inventory bomb issues, regardless of what software platform we use. And I should have done
Mhm.
that like literally starting back in 2012. And that is still makes me even more irritated with myself that I didn't do it. But it took me counting on people for all these years and constantly struggling with proper inventory costing and allocation with bill of material items, um, up until right now. And I
Mhm.
literally just finally put it on paper. But once I put it on paper, I spelled out current state. I spelled out what I wanted for future state, and what my expectation of the reporting that would come back to me. I had it in a Google Doc, and I've been sharing it with all the different platforms
Mhm.
that I've been consulting with. And and as of yesterday, I have two really rock solid options. One, maybe sticking with the existing platform that I am, but with some different consultants to manage it. And then the other is going back to the previous, but having different consultants to manage it. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think anger is one of the best ways if you channel it right. I think it's one of the best
Yes.
ways
Yeah.
to teach yourself how to define what the problem is, so you go and get it done right.
Mhm.
And yeah, we've done that. I've done that numerous times, more times than I want. Sadly, in e-commerce is brutal. You got to make sure e-commerce is a low value, high transaction game, and that is something you have to keep a pulse on all the time. Whether it's your return on
Mhm.
ad spend, which is probably one of my biggest frustrations ever. Mark Zuckerberg and Bezos take all my money, right? I mean, that's where all the dollars go. Um, and whoever owns Google, but all the agencies that worked for me over the years, every time that I fired one of them, it was I knew I could always get a better return than they could. But again, I documented what I wanted. They couldn't get it. I'm
Mhm.
like, look, here's what I got. Here's what you're getting. Why would I pay anybody if I can do this myself? So
Exactly. Mm.
yeah, anger has fueled a lot of things,
Yeah.
numerous.
But yeah, like you said, and like I mentioned as well, it's like you need to harness it
Yeah,
to do the right. Obviously, not. It's not. It's kind of is more of a nuanced kind of argument about how to
yeah,
channel it, because it's like, obviously it's important not to to to
to just be
well, not
me.
to offend people and not to be mean to people. It's
Yeah,
kind of if it kind of is channeled through kind of your own mechanism, rather than trying
yeah.
to to expose someone else to it.
Well, that's where I
I
often
wanted
find
to.
I'll go for a bike ride. If I'm if
Mm,
I'm real upset, um, I've learned two things. One, I don't ever chew people out on Mondays, not unless there's like no other choice. But over the years, I know that I have probably chewed people out too many times on Mondays. For not performing or not going right, regardless whether it's true or not. I learned I just shouldn't chew people out on Mondays, because I usually find by Tuesdays I'm more calm. and so it can be a more constructive thing. So I found that, and then
right.
the other part is, uh, I mean, just like last Monday when I hit my breaking point with my finance software, I went out. In that case, I went for a run afterwards, and I think I went for a ride on my trainer afterwards too. After I did that, um, but I do find cycling is better for my brain. I go for a run, I come back and I'm cool. But if I go on a bike ride, I will come up with solutions. I've always been that way. Almost all my products have been designed while I was riding a bicycle. It's something about it that triggers something release in my brain.
Yeah.
There's nothing that you couldn't put me in a bad mood. You'd be like, hey, I just blew your house up. I'm like, wow, yeah, I have to think about a new house anyway. After a bike ride, that would be my approach. It's just a different mindset. But I do think more people need to find whatever it is that makes you happy. Like I said, for me, it's cycling, but that's what releases them positive endorphins and helps me to find the solution to the problem rather than complaining. And I don't like anybody ever complaining if you don't have a solution. You can complain, but you better have a solution immediately after. Otherwise, I have no tolerance for hearing complaints and without solutions. It's just never been something
that's what defines if you can bring a solution to a problem, or if you can tell the manager or a leader, say, look, I know this is a problem, let me handle, I think I have what it takes to sort it. I think that puts you in a right up there when in the eyes of a leader in the company, like, okay, this guy or this woman can sort it out, I'll trust him to take it over, because as you said, if you bring a solution to the problem, people will just delegate to you, because you come up with prepared. And even if it's not work, then that's a different matter, but at least you put yourself forward, like, this is what I can do.
Exactly. Yeah.
I want now to kind of round up the conversation, and kind of to a question that I always ask of all my guests, and I think hopefully kind of ties in very nicely what we've been discussing so far. And what does success personally mean to you?
Yeah, so when I was younger, it was really, how much am I making? Am I making enough to live a really fun, lavish lifestyle and everything? And over the years, I just want to pay our bills. I'm happy with that. If I pay our bills, put a little bit of money back, I'm totally happy. I want to be able to go out and I'd like to go for, like, if I want to go outside and go for a bike ride right now, that's what I want to be able to do. That's success. If I want to go to my kids' soccer games, that's success. Me and my wife and I are here every morning to see our kids off to school. I dropped my son off at 7 for track this morning. My wife dropped my daughter off at 8 for school, and we never miss soccer games. We don't, we're there for whatever it is that they're doing. So that's ultimately, as I've gotten older, I realized, man, when I die someday, the money won't matter. I mean, my kids will hopefully be better off if I leave them some, but it's all those experiences along the way. And the older I get, the more pressure I feel to get it done. I was literally thinking last night, like, I gotta add more to my list of all the things I want to do. Like, we watched a hiking movie this weekend, and I was like, I would like to hike the Appalachian Trail. I'm like, I don't know that I really want to spend that much time, but maybe in pieces. And so I'm always thinking about. I have just so many things that I want to do between global travel and trails I want to ride and challenges I want to do, and motorcycles. I added motorcycle to the mix this past year. I always said I'd wait until I was old to get a dirt bike and an adventure bike, and I got to thinking, why would I wait until I'm old? Like, when I'm old, maybe my hands won't be able to control the damn thing. I think I should buy one now. So I got one at the end of the summer, and I freaking love that thing. I want to ride it from my house to Canada and back. I just think that would be cool. That's an endurance ride that will definitely still yield a sore butt, but my legs would probably be better. Probably, I don't know. But, it's I think that would be just as much fun as riding my gravel bike, to do that same path on dirt. So, it's funny how your definition of success changes, but it's for sure it's being able to spend that time. Spend time doing fun things. Otherwise, like I said, you just work and then you die. That's not enjoyable at all. It's you got to have the stories.
Yeah, and that also gives like meaning, because that those connections, the experiences add up and create meaning, create a sense of purpose, and that's more valuable than having. Is more valuable than perhaps having $1 million in the bank. I'm not saying that having not having $1 million in the bank is not important, but
Right.
I think that the purpose and having the connections is what enriches your life beyond what money could ever do.
Yep.
And I think that's so important in, when we are, whether it's bonding, creating human connection, and the experiences that arise from that, whether it is, like you said, going on adventures or sharing that with a loved one or with your children. It's kind of no one can take away that experience, but someone can take away your money. So it's that's the experiences stay with you for sure, and that's what defines then the kind of your life.
Yeah. Well, like this weekend, for example, I mean, speaking of that, I'm doing a 12-hour adventure race. It's 8 minutes away from my house, which is even more incredible, by the lake. But a 12-hour adventure race with my 14-year-old, and he and I have gone mountain biking a lot, and he's a phenomenal athlete. He's just naturally an athlete. I've never been naturally an athlete. I have to work to be an athlete, but he's just a little freak of nature. And I asked him last week. I was going to do it solo, but the weather was looking good, because 12 hours is, it's hard. It's a lot of people would not want to do that, but the weather was looking good. And so this past weekend I hit up the race director. I'm like, hey, can I bring a 14-year-old, my son, with me? And he said, yeah, sure. So they were really excited to have him. And I'm super stoked. He's never done an adventure race. Well, I take it back. We did a sprint adventure race for like 3 hours when he was maybe 7. It's a while back.
Wow.
And he did great. But this is going to be 12 hours of run, bike, kayak, all off-grid navigation and whatnot. And
wow, brilliant!
And that's just going to be incredible. At 14, most people are not thinking anything like that. And he didn't even blink.
No.
He's like, yeah, sure, why not? He probably doesn't know how hard brilliant. It's going to be, but that's going to be awesome.
I'm sure it will be, because having that kind of that huge opportunity to go out, and not only are you spending time with your son, it's quality time, it's bonding time, and is also in a very important age, which is like 14, very formative. You shaping your experience of life, of what the human connection feels like, and what your outlook of life can look like. And that is brilliant.
It's going to be awesome. I can't wait.
Yeah, for sure.
We've had some good stories together. We both thought each other died once and had Border Patrol and search and rescue activated. We had kind of a wild deal a few years ago, but hopefully we'll never have anything that wild again. It takes all night to figure out both of us are still alive, but the adventure race, that's where I'm excited for this one, because like I said, we've had a lot of wild encounters. Had a drone strike called on us by Border Patrol once, and that was pretty neat. Which is a whole other story. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this, because I think this is going to shape some of his he may not appreciate it now, but once you do something that hard, then everything else in relation won't be. And as you pick things off, like the first time I went on a 50-mile road bike ride with my same buddy, my same old boss, Mike, like I mentioned earlier, made me crash on my mountain bike. Or I crashed, but I was riding with him. He talked me into going on a 50-mile road bike ride one day, and I was like, man, I don't know, that's a long freaking ways. And he had a bunch of his hammerhead buddies, and I remember we went up I think it's called 11 Mile Hill in Phoenix, and I bonked. First time I ever figured out what that was, and which was one of the worst experiences you can have happen. But after that, anything under 50 miles was easy, right? And then the next one is 100, and then further and further and further. But that's where I think he may not appreciate it now, but I think to do a 12-hour race like that and realize how hard it is, anything less is going to be easy. So then it's just that next one. Okay, what do we do next? Do we ride our bikes for 24 hours or something? There's so much
exactly.
fun.
And those experiences is something that I'm sure there will be a lot of learning moments throughout those 12 hours, and it's something that you can put on your toolkit and save it for a later date. And that's invaluable. That's invaluable. Like being out and kind of exploring your limits. That's you are learning how far can you push yourself, and I think in today's society, that where it's easy. You have everything in your doorstep.
Yeah.
Everything is comfortable, and kind of going out of your way to find your limits. It's I think it's the ultimate pursuit of finding a challenge that you can live up to, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So I wanted now to kind of bring the conversation to a close with a question that is left by my previous guest. So this is a tradition I started on the podcast, where every guest leaves a question to my next guest, not knowing who they are. And the question that was left for you is the following.
Mm-hmm.
I know this question is a bit generic, but I want you to pick a particular moment and kind of explain why. So the question is the following: have your life experience informed your cycling in any noticeable way? So I want you to think of a specific example where that happened through riding bikes.
Sure. Yeah, I would say, like growing up, I hunted and fished a lot just because there wasn't much else to do, and I remember numerous times, but one specifically, my friends and I, we went out and we went for a couple buddies of mine. We went fishing like all day, and we just went. I knew I was probably 14 or something, maybe 12, and I bought the maps from the topographic maps from the county clerk's office. You could go there and buy the private land maps, and so I bought them for our county, and I figured out where all the fishing ponds were. And there's a 1,100 acre pasture to the north of me, and there was a lot of ponds in that pasture. So I was like, man, let's just go hit all these ponds today. Let's go see what they're like, see what kind of fish we can catch. And we went out there, and again, we didn't bring any food, we didn't bring any water, we just went for it. And because again, now everybody goes. I mean, if we go to the grocery store, my wife's like, "Hey, we need to get water bottles for everybody." I'm like, "We're going to the grocery store. I think it's going to be fine." But as kids, and even in the this model of life now is very different than it was when I was a kid. We never took water bottles anywhere. I mean, that just wasn't a thing. Maybe there's a cooler with some cans of soda in it, but it was, it's funny. You don't think about it now, but bottles of water didn't used to be common in the grocery store or gas station. And it's just not something you hardly ever bought. You just maybe haul some. But anyway, we went fishing all day. We left at sunrise. We came back at dark. And you know what? We were fine. And I don't even know how, because we didn't take any food. We didn't have any water. We probably drank from a stream or something, but we just had a great time and just enjoyed it. Caught a ton of fish, came back with backpacks full of fish that we put into my pond. And one of the last ponds we hit, it was just loaded with fish, and we filled our backpacks completely full. We ran back all the way back to my dad's house to put them in our pond to try to get more fish in it. But it's just something that simple that I would say is carried forward into everything now, where I look at it as I'm just going to roll with the punches, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and everything is going to work out. Because it always does, right? I mean, you look at, I'm fascinated when I think of how hard I work. And my wife and I, we both put our lives, our heart and soul into our business, into our family. And at the end of every day, you think, how are we not just like trillionaires living on an island? Because we work so much, right? But yet, again, we're not as motivated by money as we are the success of making sure everything's working right. Like our family is good, our business is good, we make payroll. I mean, there's essentials, right? But as you look at you look around you, you sometimes wonder how anybody else does it. But yet everybody else seems to do it, right? Everybody else has a house, they have a car. I mean, I'm sure there's homeless people, whatever. But I mean, by and large, the extreme majority of society makes it work. And so I just have learned over the years, no matter what I'm doing, it's going to work. I don't know how it's going to work, but it's going to work. So I think that's, find the solution and just be positive about it, and it's going to happen. It's really it's that simple. And it works.
Yeah, it's a great way of wrapping this conversation, because it kind of, it's a very positive note, and kind of makes you think about, that if you look with enough distance, then everything will be okay. You just need to kind of look at the problems. Yeah, take a step back, look at the problems in a different light. Maybe you have take a moment to recompose yourself and just look in a different light. So it's very, very important, kind of to have that perspective. So before we go, I wanted to ask you, what question would you like to leave to my next guest?
I would say, what are you doing today that's going to make you better tomorrow?
Brilliant. Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah,
it's wonderful to hear all these questions, because all of them, stimulate the conversation. You can have whole podcast conversations around them, because it's just they are open-ended and brilliant at the same time.
Sure.
Josh, it's been a pleasure to kind of really dive into kind of your experience and how you have put together your multiple businesses, and how you weaved kind of your experience through racing, but life experience as well, and kind of you transformed that into businesses that are thriving. So it's rewarding for me to hear your story and to be able to share with my community. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, man. This is always fun. I love sharing the stories of adventure and hopefully motivating people to go out and do something awesome.
Thank you for listening. If this episode got you thinking, got you motivated, share it with 2 friends who might enjoy it as well. And make sure to follow Ride to Success wherever you listen. That's the best way to let us know that you enjoy the show. And feel free to leave a review as well. That will help us massively. Until the next episode, keep riding to your own version of success. Thank you.